Good morning, Tim. How you doing?
Pretty good. I see that the Jets came through finally. The Giants almost did. They
Yeah,
gave,
it's
they
still
gave us a thrill.
disappointing.
Yeah,
The quarterback needs a lot to be desired. The
yeah.
defense
He's just
didn't
not there.
step up. I mean, I know they held the Commanders to 7 field goals, which is impressive. They didn't get in
Yeah,
the end zone, but still to lose 21, what was it 21-18 or something like that?
I couldn't watch the game. I only watched the Jet game, and
Yeah,
that was a thrilling game. You know, what was a good game was Kansas City and Bengals.
yeah,
That was
yeah.
a good nip and tuck game.
Oh, back and forth in that last call, the fourth down play where the guy missed the ball, and yeah,
So, a couple of things. You saw that they took another shot at, or they wanted to take another shot at Trump yesterday.
yeah, I did, and it brings to mind something that you wrote about a while ago, America's Annie Hall moment. So you
Yeah,
want to expand on that?
yeah, you remember the movie Annie Hall? There was a scene there where Woody and what's her name,
Diane Keaton.
Diane Keaton, are on a split screen, and
Hmm.
they're at a marriage counselor or a relationship counselor, whatever. And he says, "What about sex?" And she says, he says, "Hardly ever, 2, 3 times a week." And her screen says, "Constantly, 2, 3 times a week."
Right,
And it
right,
seems to me like that's really where we are, you know.
right.
You talk to people who are on one side of the fence, and they're in a different universe than people on the other side. I mean, it's really
They see things completely different. They could look at the same set of facts and come up with three different solutions
yeah,
to what it is. Yeah.
really is remarkable. I think this
And
shooting,
yeah, the
yeah,
shooter was pro-Ukraine, totally anti-Trump. I saw a 10-minute interview that he did with Newsweek
mhm,
in Ukraine, and he basically went there and tried to join the army, the Ukrainian army. He wanted to fight for Ukraine.
exactly, yeah.
Yeah,
He also started some Ukrainian relief organization to recruit Ukrainian soldiers or something. Now, this is a guy. I mean, Trump's plan clearly is to say to Zelensky, "Okay, give up what he took, and let's stop. And if you don't, I'm not going to send you any more weapons and money."
right, right.
And I mean, that's really where he's going. And he'll say to Putin, "I got him to stop, and now you stop too," and the war ends.
Right.
And that was the problem with this guy. He doesn't really want that. He doesn't want that to happen. So we got a lot of cross currents here, and I think these markets are not really priced for it. I don't think so. I mean, the end of a war would be positive, so I could see the market liking that.
Hmm.
But that assumes that Trump wins. I mean, if she wins, this goes on and on.
Right. The forever wars. Yep.
Yeah. What struck me, I think, and maybe it's just my bias. I don't know. I mean, I think Trump is good for the economy. I think he's going to have. I think the tax policy is the whole piece of this. You know, she changes the capital gains rate. Now, I'm not talking about unrealized capital gains. I don't think that's coming. But just the change in the rate to move it up from what 21 to 22 to 28. That's it's
Significant.
it's a 20% jump in the risk reward ratio.
Yeah.
And I see risk takers backing off. And I'm surprised that this market just keeps rallying. I got to think, there's big gains to be had. People could take their gains and say, I'm going to sit out this election and then reposition myself after the election. But the risk is great.
Well, I think we're certainly going to see that before the end of the year.
Do
Nobody
you?
wants to go. I don't think anybody wants to go into the new year with big gains and have to worry about capital gains taxes going back retroactive to January 1. So I
Hmm.
think any of those issues are going to, we're going to start to see selling soon. November, December, I think is going to be a tough month for the stock markets.
Yeah, I thought that was going to happen September, October.
Yeah,
Usually October is the key month.
yeah.
But we haven't seen it. I mean, yeah, we saw a couple of days of panic, but we go up like an escalator and down like an elevator, and the way markets have been since.
And what we talked about the other day, you say there's two-way risk, yet the market keeps going up.
Yeah.
If you buy these elevators drops, you've done okay for yourself. You know?
Well, you can look at it another way. You could look at it as like stocks have become the new commodities, and you get out of dollars and into stocks because these companies are paying dividends for the most part. They're showing capital gains. You get a reward. It's not like holding dead money,
Mm-hmm.
you know. And a company with good earnings is a good inflation hedge, I suppose. I mean, the markets are looking at it that way. The bond market's really, it's just how we have this never-ending chain of supply. We see supply as far as no matter who gets elected.
And people are still buying bonds. Yeah.
Yeah, I guess. I wonder how much of this is the government and the Fed. You don't believe the numbers. You can't
So
believe the employment
manipulating.
numbers. I don't think you can believe any of the other numbers really.
You
When
know,
you
we
have
used to
no,
talk. We used
yeah,
to talk about that. I guess it was 15 years ago. So I used to talk to Bruce about it. He'd call it the plunge protection team.
yeah,
Whenever
that was a common term.
whenever the stock market would crash, somebody would come in, and they thought it was Robert Rubin, who was then Treasury Secretary. His calling up some of his buddies and saying, "Time to step in and buy." You got
Well,
to
it's right
buy.
about the time that the BOJ started buying S&P futures
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
futures for the Nikkei.
Right.
And they really did it. It wasn't they just printed money and bought, you know. But that's, I guess, how long does this ship travel? I used the analogy the other day. We're in this big ship, and it's moving to a place where the Earth falls off, and we don't know if it's going to take 3 months or 3 years, but it's been going on for something like 30 years now. So it's really tough to call that spot.
Right.
But
Getting
we're,
closer to the end of times. Right.
well, yeah, I guess we are in it. The problem is it just takes so long to turn the ship around, you know? Now, without really drastic action. Something like a Musk Trump audit of federal spending, that could be it. But how do you get elected on that? I mean, every federal employee is going, there's no way I can vote for this guy.
There are a huge amount of federal employees, no doubt about it. Yeah.
12% of the workforce. Federal workers are 12% of the workforce. And in the states, it's a much bigger number. The states and the local governments are employing something like 50 or 60% of the workforce, at least 40, from what I forget the number, but it's not insignificant. So if you got 1 out of 8 people working for the federal government and 1 out of 4 maybe working for state and local government, it's got to be funded.
Yeah. Yeah. Somehow, some way, if he starts to reduce those expenditures, those people have to be taken care of. They have to find a
We
way.
had this long conversation at Scuttlebutt, that meeting I go to on Thursdays, and it was about what happens to revenue when taxes go up and when taxes go down. And I made the point that there's no line item agenda in the federal government that says pay for tax reduction. So if somebody says, okay, we're going to reduce the federal income tax rate by X, immediately you turn on the TV and you hear that's going to cost the government $3 trillion, $500 billion, or $300 billion. Now, I don't know how to get that because that's a static number. And they assume that nobody's going to respond to that. And I mean, so when I used to give the seminars, I would pick up a coffee cup and I would say, okay, 2 companies make this coffee cup. One sells it for $1 and one sells it for 80 cents. Which one's going to earn more money at the end of the year, have a better net profit? And then they would scratch their heads and some people would volunteer a guess, but most of them felt, well, you don't have enough information. It depends on their margins and whether or not, the lower price is a sweet spot price where you generate more volume and therefore more net revenue. And taxes work the same way. I said to the group, there's 2 numbers that guarantee 0 federal income tax. 0 and 100%. You put it at 100%, nobody's going to work. We're in the army.
Right.
So,
Right.
what's the right number? And we never really found out that number. I mean, depending on all the other factors that are around at that given moment, maybe the number's 25%, maybe it's 20%, maybe it's 15%. Who the hell knows? But we do know that the times where we did reduce the rate from X to X minus whatever, we had a big impact on revenue, and we generated a lot of tax revenue. So that's the supply side argument, I guess, or one of the supply side
Hmm.
arguments. The other is you get more output when you lower taxes and you produce. Now he takes Trump's proposal for no tax on overtime. You raised that to me and you said, well, they can't blame the rich, blame them for tax for the rich on that,
Yeah.
and that's the political side of it.
I think that's huge.
But what does it mean for productivity?
Yeah. It's huge. It's
Why?
huge.
I agree with you, by the way, but why?
Allison's son is a postal worker, and he's delivering mail at 9 o'clock at night, starting at 8 o'clock in the morning, working till 9 o'clock at night. And he said, because the regulars don't want to work, people don't want to work. The overtime is not an incentive for them. But
Uh-huh.
now, if you get an overtime, and not only are you getting time and a half, but you're getting a benefit on that 25 or 35% tax that you would normally get hit with. Yeah. She says, don't worry. If this Trump plan comes into effect, you won't be working till 9 o'clock because there'll be many people that want that overtime. There's going to be
Competition for overtime.
yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely.
And that's, I think, the interesting part of it, the really interesting part of it, because you got a workforce, and you don't have to expand your workforce.
Hmm.
If you go with overtime, overtime is a more expensive alternative, but the number that's going to be impacted is CAP-U, capacity utilization.
Hmm.
And when you get CAP-U, it's an indication of slack in the economy. If CAP-U is at 65%, it means there's a lot of capacity in the economy, and you don't have to add labor to the economy. You can use your existing workforce, and it becomes a function of whether or not it's cheaper to hire people or cheaper to use your existing workforce for overtime. With a competition for overtime, that's going to push costs down, right? You'll have
Hmm.
more efficient use of your capacity. And when CAPU, there's your dogs again. When CAPU gets to 90% or 92%, then you've got to add capacity, either in the form of labor or in the form of equipment. So, what do you think here today?
Um, I think
But,
we're going to see, we're seeing gold break out again above 2,600. I think that's a
mhm.
good sign. Reading Jared this morning, he's talking about a big move up to 3,000, which is surprising because he was a little bearish on gold recently.
Yeah, he reduced his
I,
position, I saw,
yeah,
and he likes the miners, and the miners are cheap.
yeah, they've
And the
been
thing
cheap.
about miners is you get gold and silver, and silver's had a bigger move than gold.
Yeah,
Silver was up the other day when gold had its move. Gold was up 1.5, 2%. Silver was up almost 4.
yeah.
So the silver is the sensitive one. It's the high delta play, I think.
Hmm. Yeah, seeing that break out. I think that's the easy money. Seeing that next big leg up in gold.
Well,
Um,
2 points. Why is it up?
well, I think that number one, the assassination. Number two, Putin's comments about if NATO steps in and long range missiles are fired into Russia, that's going to be a problem. And
I don't know about the assassination because we didn't have a move after that today, but the Putin statement certainly goosed it, and there was big central bank buying.
well, I say the assassination attempt because this is the second time in 2.5 months, right? 3 months? No, 2 months.
Yeah, but gold hasn't responded to it. Gold is flat today.
Well, I think gold is up. It's breaking out, is what I'm saying. But I think more of that is happening. There's more fear of these assassination attempts again and again and again. And if it happens, where do you go?
I think the fact that gold broke out and the curve uninverted tells me that inflationary expectations are high.
Hmm.
And I think that's a big piece of it. The other thing that absolutely nobody is talking about is I think October 22nd is the date that the BRICS Plus launches their currency, the unit. And that's supposed to be 40% backed by gold. So they're going to have to warehouse tons of gold to reach that 40% benchmark.
Right.
Depends on how much they issue, I guess. It'll be interesting to see how that goes over. I don't think it's going to take over right away, but I think over time it will gain traction.
It depends on if oil is priced in it, right?
Well, it's 40% gold and 60% a basket of economies, and I really don't know what those weightings are.
Yeah, you got to look
But,
into that.
but
And
that's
the
a
other
huge
big,
inflation hedge.
yeah, the other big thing that's coming up soon is I think it's the end. I think it's next week. The continuing resolution and what the Republicans put into that plan about the vote.
They caved in on that, I think.
Did they?
The speaker caved in. He couldn't get the votes. And I was watching a guy talking about that. And he said, why are we going to bother doing that? It'll never get to the Senate. Schumer won't even bring it to the floor. He said, we played this game 6 or 7 times. He said, and he's right. Schumer just won't bring it to the floor. So it gives them an opportunity to point to the Republicans and say they're willing to shut down the government over this, and they'll get some paper for that. But it's a damn shame.
It is disappointing. I mean, I would have rather than bring it to Schumer and point to Schumer and say, and he's the one that's shutting down the government because of this.
Yeah.
You know,
Yeah. Well, the media
This is
won't let you play that.
exactly.
Yeah. So I don't think that's going to happen. I think inflationary expectations are rising. You got two points of evidence for that. One, the uninverting and steepening yield curve, and two, the run on gold and metals. Oil is up too, and it's hard to say whether that's a function of the Mideast crisis or what's happening there.
I'm seeing a couple of memes on social media about where we were 4 years ago, and they talk about gas prices and the stock market and unemployment and all and where we are today. The left is always pointing, well, the stock market was at 19,000, now it's at 40,000.
Yeah.
But that's a function of 3.5 years of big inflation. Housing prices. Look at housing prices too, and the left has always been the party of the working man, yet the working man's not invested. The working man is not getting their home appreciated. They talk about they point to the right, to the Republicans, as being the party of big business. But that's who's succeeding. And if they're going to chomp on the fact that the stock market's up doubled in the last 3.5 years.
I saw the meme you're talking about, and I know who
Yeah.
put it out.
Yeah.
And she's very left.
Yeah.
And the thing that struck me, and I almost responded to it, and said, "Well, what about COVID? Did you forget about that? Is Trump to blame for COVID?
Right.
The whole the government shut down the economy. Are you going to blame Trump because government shut down the economy? He fought that.
Globally, yeah.
He left it to the states, and some of the states' governors just said, no, you're not allowed to go to work. And then they said, well, you're responsible. Now they're making him responsible for that unemployment, And the other thing is, like Charlie Payne said, we spent $7 trillion to get $5 trillion in growth.
Right.
I mean, look at the amount of money they spent to get here.
Small losses, but you make it up in volume theory, right?
That's right. So, I mean, we're back to the split screen again.
Yeah, it's we are really in America's anti-hall moment. That's for sure.
Yeah.
The left really looks at their side. The right really looks at their side, and it's not even rose-colored glasses. It's just seeing the world through different lenses.
Yeah, it's a blue lens and a red lens. That's really where we are. And that, Dad used to say, don't talk to anybody about politics or religion. And if you were alive, I'd say that it's the same thing. These people have exchanged their religious views for their political views.
Yeah.
They bought they bought their politics on faith. And if you believe someplace that your God said 2 plus 2 equals 11, I can show up with math all day long and try to prove you wrong. You're just not going to hear it. You bought it on faith, and that's it. And that's exactly where we are.
Right.
It's this new population of zealots on both sides.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think that sums it up. Hopefully, we have an interesting market this week. I guess we'll try it again tomorrow.
Yeah, we'll see what the Fed does. I think that's cool. Talk to you tomorrow. Tomorrow's Tuesday.
Yeah, but I'm
Okay.
saying, when is the Fed is the Fed tomorrow or Tuesday or Wednesday?
I think they're Wednesday, but I
That's
don't
what
know.
I think so too. All right.
See you tomorrow.
Have a good week. Bye bye.